everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Punla Coffee Table. We're here for one of our chats around the coffee table with myself, my wife Judy, and Joy, and we're going to address some questions. So sit back, get comfortable, and we'll have a chat around the table. So our first question was one that I think a lot of Christians struggle with. Why is there evil in the world? You know, if God is so good, then why do we have evil? So let's just open it up for conversation at this point. Any thoughts on why there is evil?
At least the thing that comes to mind is because there's free will, and when there's free will,
Well, if you choose anything that's not God, then it has to be the opposite of God, right?
If God is good, so if you choose something that's not along with God's, is gonna be not good.
I know there's a doctrine called necessary evil, but people have pretty strong feelings about that it is not necessarily biblical. I don't have a strong opinion on this, but I think that evil is the obvious opposite of a perfect God. I think that's the what people almost drive this to is, did God create evil? And if he did, then the question that always comes up is, then is God really good? It's this circular logic, right?
The dilemma of, is God good?
I think the God good part is easy because he defines it, right? We don't get to choose what good is. Good is defined by whatever God chooses it to be because he created everything. We don't own our own universe, so we don't get to actually make that definition.
Yeah, in our biblical worldview, whatever God says, that's what's good. If God will take somebody's life, he has the right to do that. And because he's the one that gives the life and he can take it away. We typically ask, how come if he's good, why all these children get molested or they get hungry and so much suffering? And that's evil, or somebody do bad things to these kids. We tend to ask, like, why God does not stop that from happening. What's happening is, because God gave us a free will, God did not ask a certain individual to do evil things. They decided to do that themselves. We should not be blaming God for individual's choice. And it's our choice to do evil. God is not going to stop you from doing that because that's how he created the world. We have free will.
He created free will, and he wanted creatures that are able to choose freely. It's just a byproduct. It's a byproduct of the free will that we have.
Well, and I think as humans, we want to categorize bad. And what we call evil is like the extreme bad. But to God, anything that is not perfect really ends up being bad. And he doesn't differentiate between the things we call really evil, like a child molester or genocide or whatever it might be. Sin is sin to God. So I think in a lot of reasons, I think humans grapple with this is because we're trying to define it on a scale, and to God it's our standards, right? And so compared to me, that person is really evil, but compared to God, we're all evil, right?
And the other thing of that is, if God is like in the Old Testament, there's a cases that is always being asked, is like, well, God allowed this genocide of a certain group of people. That's evil. How can God, do such a thing? But the thing that we don't quite, we have to grapple with, or we have to really think about, is God can do whatever he wants.
Well, the thing is, it's like understanding all those accounts in the Bible about the ancient civilizations where God told certain group of people to go carry this out and kill everybody. It's a form of judgment. When and you put it in today's time, if somebody wronged you, you want justice, right? So if the person that wronged you gets punished, you don't see it as evil. So why do we put not see it in the same way when God gives justice and carry out his judgment to a certain group of people? Why do we see it differently? We it's
Well, and I think we got to recognize God has a consistent character. He never changes. Yeah, he can do whatever he wants, but the nice thing about God is his character is consistent yesterday, today, and tomorrow, so we can count on his character. So
it's just
and it's just all his character traits, love, whatever it is, but justice is really what we're talking about when we're talking about good and evil. And I think we put our blinders on and try to look at the world within our cultural bias or our perspective. We ignore everything else that's going on in the grander scheme or throughout history. And I think Joy's right. It's like the things in the Bible that people will point to as being, evil, that God permitted evil. Well, that might be judgment for those people. They did something,
Right, it is.
or it is judgment.
They did evil. They walked. They did evil. So God pronounced judgment, and those orders of God to do this to the certain people is a form of judgment.
Yeah, I agree. And God is very patient. That's the reason sometimes it takes hundreds of years before that judgment is carried out. But people always earn it. And in fact, we've all earned judgment. I think it's more, we don't like the fact that we might be judged. So I think we end up trying to define evil in such a way to make ourselves look good.
Well, I think the problem with us too is we tend to define what's evil.
Mhm.
And it's like if it goes according to our cultural biases or, it suits us, it's not evil.
It's usually when it's favorable for me, it's not
It's
evil.
not evil.
That's the
So
human
that's the
nature.
problem.
I think if you look through history
Human nature.
at people that were barbaric, let's look at the Christian Inquisition. Those people would not define themselves as being evil, because they're defining it themselves. We look back at it in history and say, "Oh, that was horrible." Those were evil things. The Crusades. These are Christian people, but they did not define themselves as evil. But in the end, it's really up to God to define what is good and bad. When justice is being served, and God often uses ungodly people to carry out his judgment. And the Bible, especially the Old Testament, is full of those events. And I think that's somehow detractors from the Bible get confused with the stories in the Bible as God uses ungodly people to carry out his judgment or his purposes. It doesn't mean he condones their bad behavior. He uses that for his purposes.
Yeah, well, if you look at that argument with Habakkuk, it's like in the prophet Habakkuk, where he says it's like God has like this our nation, our people are like doing evil. When are you gonna like take some actions? And then God answers him, okay, I will bring the Assyrian to punish the evil that's going on in the land. And then Habakkuk says, Lord, they're more evil than us. So why are you using them? So it's like, and God answers him, don't worry about it, because they're gonna get their judgment too.
Their judgment too. And later he uses Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, and then eventually the Babylonians face judgment, and then it's the progress of the sequence. But God uses those what we would perceive as evil for his purposes to carry out judgment on people that deserve judgment, just like us. Well, do we think that evil is necessary? I mean, obviously, I think we can come to the conclusion that evil is the natural opposite product, consequence,
of not following
not
God.
following God's purposes. So does that mean evil is necessary, or that God actually created the concept of evil? This is scholars fight over this one.
Like I said, if God's way is gonna overrule everything else, it won't exist. But the thing is, it allows free will. Then the natural product, if you have the ability to disobey God, then the product is evil.
God is who He is. He's God. He's all-knowing. He created everything, and when we say everything, we better include everything. I guess, would He really be supreme if He wasn't in control of everything?
I guess it's that other question too: who created these diseases?
Yeah.
We think it's like God is not in control of those, or the bad weather, or like hurricanes and volcano eruptions. And so we think it's out of God's control. But the thing is, God is in control of all those.
Yeah, and I think it's at least myself as a Christ follower, I believe bad things are the natural way of this broken world.
Yeah.
But the difference between me and a non-believer is how I deal with the things that are going to come my way. Because as it says in the Proverbs, I mean, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. That's the way the world works. The question is how you're going to deal with the situations that come your way. And I think our character is built through trials and tribulations. I mean, that's what Jesus says, and He promises that we're going to face it. So are the bad things that happen in this life just a natural product of how we're going to mature into the people we need to become? Or is it just because it's a broken world?
I think it's part of the broken world because before the falling of man, everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Once the Adam and Eve chose to rebel, then that's the downfall. Everything deteriorated. Your days aged really early,
When
and
God
everything.
said so, it's like death come to everything in this world because of that rebellion.
You shall surely die. It didn't mean immediately. It meant that death now has come in, entered the world, right? Yeah, I sometimes struggle with the concept of, the bad things and the trials of my life build me into a better person.
Well, it's
So
one of those what's amazing character of God. It's like all these bad things that happen, he's still using it for His purpose.
I think that's fair.
Well, and the problem with us as human beings, we tend to look at certain things, the hardness of life, hardship of life, as like God is not being loving to me. But that's not right. He has purposes that He needs to accomplish. So whether you're part of the one that's gonna be in the like happy side of it, or is on the bad side of it, then it's His plan. So the thing is, we always look at life as like, oh, if I'm on that side where the happy life is, then it's great. And on the other side, well, God will do His purpose. Sometimes you're on that side, it's bad, like you get cancer, you get all these problems, and not on that good side of life, but He's still accomplishing what's best for you and what's best for the world. It's not necessarily that you're the one that's going to benefit from that experience or what we perceive as hardship that we're going through. But of course, we're human. We always want the easy life. We we don't like the hard life. But as you grow in Christ, you're going to welcome. Well, not Paul. Job said,
I'm gonna
you
come
know,
out better.
no, he said like God give and God
God
can
takes.
take. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Amen.
So it doesn't matter if He take or He give. It's God's decision, but He's
He's
trying
Lord.
to accomplish the purpose, and that's you always say that your comfort is not the purpose. It's not the purpose. There's a greater purpose, and it's not your comfort.
Yeah, and I think that that encompasses the things that happen to us in our life, like the way you guys grew up. You know, your father was taken early. He died at early age, and it put you guys in some complicated circumstances, hard circumstances. But look at where you got to.
Yeah.
Look at how it built character that you've been able to use in other ways, and it's actually prepared you to be able to relate to people that are going through similar things. I think God can use it. I don't think it necessarily was God, ordained or whatever it might have been, but I think He uses those circumstances of this broken world and can build His people to help other people.
Yeah. Well, the purpose is to help other people, service to other people, to be His hands and feet. So whether in your suffering or in your, best happy life ever, no problem or nothing, it's His purpose. It's His, service to other people.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our chat around the table. If you have some ideas of some questions you'd like for us to chat about, please send them to us. You can leave comments here or on our website, or you can email me directly. We really appreciate any of your feedback. But until next time, around the Punla coffee table, God bless everyone.